So, have you ever heard the saying, everybody has to be somewhere all the time? Never heard that? How about no matter where you go, there you are?
Yes.
Okay. Silly, perhaps, maybe attention getters. But unarguably true that everybody has to be somewhere all the time. And that no matter where you go, there you are. My theme this month, as you just heard, is How Spirit Shines Through. And today's topic is making elegant choices. Because we're always on the move, aren't we? We're always moving physically. We're always moving mentally. And we're always in movement emotionally. So the real question isn't really, are we on the move? The real question is, how's that working for you? And it seems to me that how it's working for me is directly related to the choices that I'm making. Ernest Holmes, in his Science of Mind writings, often states that we are always evolving. In his words, the spiral of life is upward. Evolution carries us forward. Eternal and progressive expansion is its law. And there are no breaks in its continuity. He goes on to say, metaphysically, we recognize universal spirit as the source of all life and all inspiration. The human mind is an extension of the eternal mind. Therefore, our evolution is the unfolding of the universal and infinite mind through our thought. So then we must ask ourselves, well then how does that work? It works through the use of our imagination. It works through our willingness to evolve, and it works through our use of making choices. So I am destined to make choices. And if I'm destined to make choices, I'd like those choices to be elegant choices. How about you? Marcia Sinitar's book, which some of you may already be familiar with, Elegant Choices, Elegant Healing. Actually, it's Elegant Choices, Healing Choices. This has been required reading for practitioner students in the Science of Mind philosophy for a number of years. Marcia Sinitar is an organizational psychologist, an educator, a keynote speaker for many years, and a writer who you may remember started her writing career with the book, Do What You Love, The Money Will Come. I have to tell you, in the years following, she has written over 24 self-actualization books, including Don't Call Me Old, I'm Just Awakening, and Work as a Spiritual Path. I'm always glad to be reunited with Marcia's writings through her books. As each of my 3 daughters graduated from college, I gave them a copy of Do What You Love, The Money Will Come, some years before I even knew about religious science or practiced it in any way and had learned what that really meant. Now, as I read through the list of books that Sinitar has written over the years, I find her message of finding grace and wholeness in everything we choose becoming clearer and clearer to me. For one, my body is always on the move. My mind is always on the move. And my emotions are always on the move. And I'm always at choice in the directions those go. Why not make those choices elegant? Elegant is one of those words I like almost as much as opulent. It just sounds like what you'd like it to be. elegant. She describes elegant choices as those that are healthful, those that have motive and quality. Elegant choices tend toward beauty, truth, courage, honor, those which are life-supporting in quality and in motive. And while each of these qualities has individual and personal meanings for each one of us, as Marcia says, the common thread is the tendency toward them in our individual choices. Interesting. You know, Holmes says pretty much the same thing. His words are these. He says, what we demonstrate today, tomorrow, and the next day is not as important as the tendency our mind is taking, the dominant attitude of our mind. If every day things are a little better, a little happier, a little more harmonious, a little more health-giving and joyous, if each day we are expressing more life, we're going in the right direction. We are honoring how Spirit shines through. I've been rereading the autobiography of Andre Agassi this past week. This is a compelling story of a life of choices, but not always elegant ones. And I was pulled back into that from having read it a number of years ago as I work through this material for this talk. And I mention it here today because it's an example of evolving upward and forward in consciousness to a point where he began to make elegant choices. So let me share some of his story with you. He was a world-famous professional tennis player from the time he was 16 years old until he was in his mid-30s. How many of you recognize the name? Andre Agassi. It's pretty much the room. But he began his tennis career at age 4. The hope and dream of his father that fame and fortune would come about through this small child. The child, however, did not have that dream, and as a small child, did not get to make that choice. His life was regulated and dominated for many years by his father's choices through him. For those of you familiar with any form of professional sports, you know that the preparation, the pressure to win, the influence of the media, the cost of travel, of support groups, and of coaching, and all of these things were in some way visited upon this child, who at 8 years of age was playing in tournaments, not only just locally, but around the world at age 8, and expected to excel. The story is partly a heart-rendering one, despite the incredible success and monetary riches that Andre achieved in his career. The success was in the skills developed because of his athletic ability. Came with the package. The sadness was in the fact that this career brought him no joy, and he believed that he had no other path to follow. His schooling was greatly minimized in order to make room for endless practice sessions on the tennis court. His social skills were limited to contact with his opponents, which is a pretty narrow exposure to begin with, especially when these are people whose job it is to beat you before you beat them. So why am I even telling you this story? It sounds so negative and unlike what you normally hear from this podium, because it's an incredible example of how Spirit can move through us. As Agassi and his multi-million-dollar body moved into his 30s, that body began to express more loudly and more painfully, its resistance to further abuse. Even earlier than that, there had been messages that the ceaseless training and the pounding of so many hours of play were taking their toll on his physical self. His decision to retire from professional sports was difficult and yet necessary. Difficult because tennis was all he knew how to do. So it represented who and what he was in his mind. Necessary because his body could no longer perform at the level he had risen to in the sport. So he made the choice and retired. Now began Andre Agassi's life of making elegant choices. Andre and his wife, Steffi Graf, whose name may also be familiar to some of you, because she also is a famous tennis star of years gone by, they have 2 children whom they raise with deep love and support for each child's uniqueness. Andre Agassi's net worth is $175 million. When we hear that, though, we should also know that his father was an immigrant from Iran, who after migrating to the United States became a boxing coach to support his family. So it's a wonderful example of how far you can go, at least in the financial world. Andre made the elegant choice after retirement of funding an $85 million project to buy property in one of the most economically depressed areas of Clark County, Nevada, which is where Las Vegas is. He made the next elegant choice to build a $40 million kindergarten through 12th grade school there, and to make it available to children who otherwise might not have any other opportunity to stay in school through grade 12 or to ever have a chance to go to college. Most of the money raised for these projects came from Agassi's own pocket. The rest of it came from his name recognition, sponsors who knew him because of his career as a famous tennis player. Let me share with you the words of the mission statement of this educational foundation. This foundation and its work was conceived in the belief that nothing has a greater impact on children's lives than education that they receive, and that all children deserve outstanding academic experiences, regardless of what neighborhoods they live in. It is a climate of hope and high expectations, meaning the foundation, where children are nurtured but also given the focus and the discipline to reach their potential and achieve their dreams. This elegant choice, resulting in Andre's decision to provide education for children who otherwise might not have that opportunity, and it comes from his own absence of an appropriate education as a child. So while Andre's body is moving differently now, his mind is on the move in ways that support, encourage, and create ways for others to make their own elegant choices. His emotions are on the move too. Not that they weren't before, because those of you who ever saw him play knew that he played with great emotion. His emotions now, though, are on the move in positive and life-affirming directions for himself and obviously then for those around him. Recalling Marcia Sinitar's words, elegant choices are those that are healthful, are those that have motive and quality. Elegant choices tend toward beauty, truth, courage, honor, those which are life-supporting in quality and motive. Incidentally, let me mention two other things about Agassiz Educational Foundation and Project. One, children participating in that program are from all walks of life, including those who come from distressed families or agencies, as well as those whose backgrounds are typical of a more balanced life, which brings these classes, this learning experience, the opportunity on the part of these children to learn about each other and to work together harmoniously. And the second thing I'd like you to know about this is that many of these students in this program, the majority of these students in this program, whose choice is to go on to college, have the opportunity to be funded by this foundation as well. So, as you can see, even choices made in a negative fashion for this child who grew through that enabled him to amass the sources, the financial sources, to do this for hundreds, thousands of children. So you see how elegant choices come into play. In closing, I'd just like to offer each of you the opportunity in the coming week, or weeks if you choose, to address the ways in which you have already made elegant choices in your life. And by that I mean choices that are healthful, choices that tend toward these attributes I've been talking about: beauty, truth, courage, honor, life-supporting and quality and motive. Then, using what has already been demonstrated in your life through the tendencies of those thoughts, take some time to ponder the areas in your life where you would now like to apply those same life-supportive qualities and motives, those elegant choice processes, to bring about even newer and better. And remember that, as Ernest Holmes says, the spiral of life is upward. Evolution carries us forward. Eternal and progressive expansion is its law. And there are no breaks in its continuity. If you remember only that part of what I just said, until you hear the YouTube talk, remember there are no breaks in its continuity. We're always evolving. We're always on the move, mentally, physically, emotionally. Why not take advantage of the opportunities that we always have to make elegant choices? After all, that is certainly one of the ways how Spirit shines through you. And so it is.